The silence in the diplomatic chamber was heavy. Minji sat at the curved table made from some alien metal that seemed to shift colors in the light. Her hands rested flat on the cold surface, but inside she felt like her heart was beating too. Fast. Across from her, the aliens waited. They had been waiting for 3 hours now, and she knew they were doing it on purpose. The Harmony Point Station hung in space between the stars, built by the Galactic Council as a neutral meeting place. It looked peaceful from the outside with its white walls and spinning rings, but Minji knew better. This was where empires came to die. This was where the strong told the weak how things would be. Do-Yun shifted in his chair beside her. His military uniform was pressed and clean, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. He had commanded fleets that could burn worlds, but here he was just another human waiting to hear their fate. On her other side, Worry kept checking her tablet, reading through alien biology reports that might help them understand what they were dealing with. The main doors opened with a soft hiss. The first to enter were the Velf. They moved like living crystal sculptures, their bodies catching and bending light in ways that hurt to look at directly. Their leader walked with steps that made no sound. Behind them came the Kroon, looking like giant insects in dark armor, their many eyes reflecting the chamber lights like black mirrors. Minji had studied both species for years. The Veil thought they were artists and philosophers, but they had weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. The Kroon shared one mind across billions of bodies, making them perfect soldiers who never questioned orders. Together they controlled most of the galaxy. Ambassador Minji of Earth, the Veilth leader, spoke through a translator device that made its voice sound like singing crystal. I am Crystalline, Singer of Sorrows. We come to offer mercy. Mercy, the word made Minji's stomach turn. She had heard that word before from aliens who thought humans were nothing more than clever animals. She stood slowly, keeping her face calm even though she wanted to scream. Speaker Crystalline, Singer of Sorrows, she said. We are here to discuss peace between our peoples. The Kroon translator stepped forward. It looked like all the others, but when it spoke, the voice was different, flat, cold. I am Hyvinode 737. I speak for the Overmind. There is no discussion. There are only terms. Worry made a small sound beside her, quickly covered with a cough. Do-Yun's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. They had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a slap. The chamber's lights dimmed, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed the galaxy with human colonies marked in blue and alien territory in red. There was so little blue compared to all that red. Humans have spread too far, Crystalline, Singer of Sorrows said. The display zoomed in to show human worlds on the outer edge of known space. Your species grows too fast. You take risks that endanger others. You must be contained. Minji watched the display show human ships, human cities, human families. All marked for abandonment. What exactly are you proposing? Hyvinode 737 spoke without emotion. All human colonies beyond the Sol system will be evacuated. All human ships will return to Earth space. Humans will not leave their home system without permission. The words hit like physical blows. Minji thought of the farming worlds where children played under alien suns. The research stations where humans were learning secrets of the universe. The trading posts where different species worked together. All of it would be lost. That's impossible, Do-Yun said, his voice tight with control. We have 40 million people living in those colonies, families, entire civilizations we've built. They will be relocated, the Veilth leader said, as if moving 40 million people was simple. We will provide transport. Those who resist will be dealt with appropriately. Worry leaned forward. What about our research? Our scientific work? We're on the verge of breakthroughs that could help everyone. Human science is unpredictable, Hyvinode 737 replied. It will be supervised, guided, made safe. Minji felt cold spreading through her chest. They weren't just talking about moving people. They were talking about ending human civilization as an independent force, making humanity into pets. And if we refuse? She asked. The silence stretched out. The aliens exchanged looks that probably meant something in their cultures. Finally, Crystalline Singer of Sorrows spoke. Then we will ensure compliance through other means. Your species will survive, but perhaps not in the numbers you prefer. It was a threat wrapped in pretty words. Minji had heard enough threats to recognize them. She thought about the human fleets hiding in dark space, about the secret projects that even she didn't know all the details of, about the sleeping ship somewhere in the outer system that held humanity's greatest secret. How long do we have to consider your terms? She asked. There is nothing to consider, Hyvanode 737 said. You will signal your acceptance now, or we will begin enforcement actions within 1 standard day. Doyun's hand moved slightly toward his cum device. It was a tiny movement, but Minji caught it. He wanted to warn the fleet. She gave him the smallest shake of her head. Not yet. We need time to contact our government, she said. Surely you understand that such a decision cannot be made by ambassadors alone. The Veilth leader made a sound like glass breaking. Laughter. Maybe your government is here, Ambassador? You are here? The decision is yours. Worry was reading something on her tablet, her eyes wide. She turned the screen so Minji could see. Population projections, resource calculations. The aliens had done their research. They knew exactly how many humans could fit in the Sol system. They knew how many would have to die to make room. Minji stood again, her chair scraping against the floor. We need to discuss this among ourselves. Surely you can grant us 1 hour. 30 minutes, Crystalline Singer of Sorrows said. Then we will have your answer. The aliens filed out of the chamber, leaving the humans alone. As soon as the doors closed, Doyun activated a privacy field that would stop most listening. Devices, they're not negotiating, he said. This is surrender or extermination. The numbers don't work, Worry added, showing them her tablet. Even if we agreed, they're asking us to fit twice our current population into Earth space. Half of us would starve. Minji walked to the window that showed the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human families were going about their lives, not knowing that their existence hung by a thread. Somewhere out there, Taehun waited with the fleet, hoping for orders that would let them fight instead of run, and somewhere out there, in the cold and dark, something slept that the aliens knew nothing about. Something that could change everything. She thought about the message she could send. 2 simple words that would wake forces the galaxy had never seen. But once she spoke them, there would be no going back. The careful balance of power, the illusion that humans were just another species trying to get by, would be shattered forever. The aliens returned before the 30 minutes were up. They took their seats and waited. What is your decision? Crystalline Singer of Sorrows asked. Minji looked at her companions. Doyun gave her a slight nod. Worry closed her eyes and nodded too. They knew what had to be done. She reached for her communicator with steady hands, even though her heart was racing. The aliens watched, probably thinking she was about to surrender her species to save a few million lives. Instead, she opened a channel that reached across space to a ship they didn't know existed, to a sleeper they couldn't imagine, to humanity's real answer to those who would cage them. Wake her, she said. The message traveled through space faster than light, jumping from relay to relay until it reached the outer edge of the system. In the asteroid belt, where chunks of rock drifted in the darkness, a ship received the signal. The ship looked ordinary. From the outside, just another research vessel doing surveys in empty space. But inside, something extraordinary began to wake. Back on Harmony Point, the aliens had returned to the negotiation chamber. They moved with the confidence of beings who had never lost a war. Crystalline Singer of Sorrows positioned itself at the head of the table, while Hyvanode 737 stood at attention like a living statue. Minji felt the weight of every second passing. Somewhere far away, systems were coming online. Monitors were lighting up. A sleeper was stirring after years of waiting. But here, in this room, she had to keep the aliens talking until it was too late for them to stop what was coming. We have reviewed your terms, she said, her voice steady. But we need clarification on several points. The Veilth leader's crystalline body shifted colors from blue to purple. Annoyance, probably. There is nothing to clarify. Humans will return to Earth space. This is not negotiable. But you haven't explained how this helps anyone, Worry said, leaning forward. Humans have been good neighbors. We trade fairly, we share technology, we help with research projects. Hyvanode 737 turned its many eyes toward her. Human expansion follows no pattern. Human behavior cannot be predicted. The Overmind has calculated 17 possible futures where human actions lead to galactic war. The young crossed his arms. And how many futures did your calculations show where imprisoning an entire species leads to peace? The Kroon translator was quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, its voice was different, colder. The Overmind does not calculate futures where humans remain free to spread. Such futures are too dangerous to allow. The holographic display changed to show detailed maps of human colonies. Each one was marked with population numbers, resource output, strategic value. The aliens had been watching for a long time, gathering information, planning this moment. Look at your growth rate, Crystalline Singer of Sorrows said. The display showed charts and graphs. In 50 years, humans have established 47 colonies. You reproduce faster than any species in the Council. You adapt to environments that kill others. You are a plague that spreads. Minji forced herself to stay calm. She had heard this argument before from alien diplomats who thought they were being reasonable. They saw human expansion and called it invasion. They saw human adaptability and called it dangerous. We're explorers, she sighed. We're curious. We want to learn and grow. That's not a crime. It is when it threatens the stability of the galaxy, Hyvanode 737 replied. The Overmind has observed human behavior in crisis situations. Humans do not surrender. Humans do not accept limitations. Humans fight until they win or die. This makes you unpredictable. The words stung because they were true. Humans did fight when cornered. They did refuse to give up. But Minji had never thought of that as a flaw. So your solution is to cage us? Doyan asked. Our solution is to guide you, Crystalline Singer of Sorrows said. The display changed again, showing plans for Earth space. Orbital habitats, controlled environments. Prison colonies disguised as cities. Humans will be cared for. Your needs will be met. Your population will be managed at sustainable levels. Worry made a choking sound. Manage? You mean controlled? You mean you'll decide who lives and who dies? We mean you will be saved from yourselves, the Veilth leader said. Left alone, humans will consume resources until worlds are barren. You will fight wars until civilizations burn. We have seen this pattern before. Minji thought about the human colonies the aliens wanted to destroy. New Soul, where artists from 12 different species worked together to create beauty that none could achieve alone. Bright Harbor, where human scientists had developed medicine that saved millions of alien lives. Freedom Station, where refugees from across the galaxy found safety and new homes. What about our contributions? She asked. Human doctors have cured diseases that plagued your people for centuries. Human engineers have built ships that carry your goods across the galaxy. Human teachers have educated alien children on frontier worlds. Individual humans may be useful, Hyvanode 737 admitted. The Overmind calculates that perhaps 10% of your species could be preserved as specialists. The rest are redundant. The casual way it said redundant made Minji's blood run cold. They were talking about killing 90% of humanity like it was a simple efficiency problem. And if we refuse your guidance? Doyan asked, though they all knew the answer. Crystalline Singer of Sorrows made that glass-breaking sound again. Then we will provide it regardless of your preferences. Your ships will be disabled. Your colonies will be evacuated by force. Those who resist will be considered enemy combatants. The display showed fleet positions. Alien warships surrounding every human world. Orbital platforms armed with weapons that could sterilize planets. Transport ships waiting to carry away everyone. Who survived? How long have you been planning this? Worry asked. Since first contact, the Veilth leader replied. We recognized the threat immediately. Humans were different from other species we had encountered. Too aggressive, too adaptable, too willing to take risks. Minji remembered first contact. She had been a young diplomat then, full of hope about humanity joining a galactic community. The aliens had seemed so wise, so advanced. They spoke of peace and cooperation and shared knowledge. But even then, she had noticed the way they looked at humans, like scientists studying dangerous animals. We gave you time to prove us wrong. Crystalline, singer of sorrows, continued. 50 years to show that humans could be trusted. Instead, you spread faster than ever. You formed alliances with species we had not approved. You developed technologies without oversight. We lived free, Doyun said. You lived dangerously, Hyvanode 737 corrected. The Overmind has been patient, but patience has limits. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Minji thought about the message she had sent. How long would it take? How long did they need to keep talking? Show us the transport plans, she said finally. If we're going to move 40 million people, we need to see how you intend to do it. The aliens exchanged glances. Then new displays appeared, showing massive ships designed to carry human populations. But as Minji studied them, she realized the truth. The ships weren't designed for comfort or long-term habitation. They were designed for one-way trips to places humans wouldn't want to go. Labor camps, Worry whispered, reading the same data. You're planning to use us as slave labor. Guided employment, Crystalline, singer of sorrows, corrected. Humans will work in areas where their adaptability is useful. Mining operations, hazardous environment maintenance. Research that requires expendable subjects. Expendable subjects. The words echoed in Minji's mind. They weren't just planning to imprison humanity. They were planning to use them up like tools. She looked at her companions. Doyun's face was stone, but she could see the rage burning in his eyes. Worry was pale, her hands shaking as she read through more plans on her tablet. Around them, the alien representatives waited with the patience of beings who had already won. But somewhere in the dark between the stars, something was stirring. Systems were coming online that the aliens had never imagined. A consciousness was awakening that would change everything. They thought they knew about humans. Minji just had to keep them talking a little longer. Minji stared at the holographic displays showing transport ships and labor camps. Her mouth felt dry, but she forced herself to speak. We need more time to consider these details. Surely moving 40 million people requires careful planning. Crystalline zinger of sorrows. Shifted colors from purple to deep red. You have had enough time. The Galactic Council has been patient with human delays. This patience ends now, but the logistics alone, Worry began, are not your concern, Hyvanode 737 interrupted. The Overmind has calculated all necessary variables. Transport begins in 30 standard hours. Compliance is not optional, 30 hours. Minji felt her heart sink. Even if her message had been received, 30 hours might not be enough time. She looked at Doyun, who was studying his own tablet. With growing alarm, Commander? She asked quietly. Doyun showed her his screen. Fleet positions were updating in real time. More alien ships were arriving at the edge of human space. Not just a few patrol vessels, but entire battle groups with enough firepower to crack worlds open. They're not here to negotiate, he whispered. They're here to make sure we can't fight back? Jiwan, the youngest member of their delegation, had been quiet until now. She was barely out of the diplomatic academy, brought along to observe and learn. But as she read through the alien plans on her own tablet, her face went white. Ambassador, she said, her voice shaking. The population numbers don't match, Minji frowned. What do you mean? They have 40 million humans listed for transport. But the camps they're showing us can only hold 15 million. Even packed tight. The chamber went silent. Crystalline, singer of sorrows, and Hyvanode 737 exchanged what might have been glances. For the first time since negotiations began, The aliens looked uncomfortable. Where are the other 25 million? Supposed to go? Doyan asked, his voice deadly quiet. Adjustments will be made, the Veilth leader said. Not all humans require relocation? Adjustments? Worry leaned forward. You mean murder. You're planning to kill more than half of all humans living in the colonies. We prefer the term population optimization, Hyvanode 737 replied without emotion. The Overmind has determined that many humans are genetically redundant. Preserving the best examples of your species while eliminating excess population serves the greater good. Minji felt something cold spreading through her chest. They weren't just talking about slavery. They were talking about genocide. Systematic murder of billions of people, dressed up in clinical language and bureaucratic efficiency. You're talking about families, she said, children. Scientists, artists, teachers, farmers, people with dreams and hopes and lives worth living. We are talking about numbers, Crystalline Singer of Sorrows replied. Resources, sustainability, the galaxy cannot support unlimited human expansion. Better to control the problem now than deal with larger numbers later. Jiwan was reading more data, her face getting paler by the minute. They have selection criteria, she whispered. Age limits, genetic markers, productivity ratings. They've been studying us for decades, deciding who lives and who dies. The holographic display changed to show databases filled with human genetic information. Medical records, psychological profiles, performance evaluations from human colonies. The aliens had been watching, cataloging, preparing for this moment for generations. How? Doyan asked. How did you get all this information? Humans are. Trusting, Hyvanode 737 said, you share data freely. You welcome aliens to your worlds. You never suspected that your guests were gathering intelligence for your replacement. Minji thought about all the alien visitors to human colonies over the years. Scientists claiming to study human culture. Traders offering new technologies. Diplomats building relationships. All of them spies, preparing for genocide. The medical centers, Worry said suddenly. The alien-built hospitals on human worlds. They weren't gifts, they were data collection points. Among other things, Crystalline Singer of Sorrows agreed. Your species is remarkably willing to provide biological samples for the promise of better health care. The betrayal cut deep. Humans had trusted these aliens. They had welcomed them, worked with them, considered them friends. And all the while, the aliens had been planning their destruction. What about the other species in the council? Minji asked. Do they know about this? The other species understand necessity, the Veilth leader replied. They have seen what happens when aggressive. Species are allowed to expand unchecked. They support our decision. Or they're too afraid of you to object, Doyan said. Hyvanode 737 tilted its head. Fear is a useful tool for maintaining order. The other species have learned that cooperation brings benefits, resistance brings consequences. Diwan was still reading, her hands shaking as she scrolled through data. They're not just planning to kill the colonists, she said. They're planning to sterilize Earth too. Population controls, breeding permits, genetic modifications to make. Humans less ... human. The display showed detailed plans for Earth's future. Orbital platforms to monitor the planet, atmospheric processors to adjust the environment, genetic laboratories to modify human DNA. The aliens weren't just planning to imprison humanity. They were planning to transform them into something else entirely. You want to turn us into pets, Minji said. We want to turn you into survivors, Crystalline Singer of Sorrows replied. Unmodified humans are too dangerous to coexist with civilized species, but properly guided you could become useful members of galactic society. Useful slaves, you mean? Useful citizens with appropriate limitations, Minji looked around the chamber. At the alien representatives who spoke of genocide like it was urban planning. At her own people, faces pale with horror as they realized the scope of what was planned. At the displays showing the systematic destruction of everything humans had built, She thought about the human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Families sitting down to dinner, not knowing they had hours left to live. Children playing in parks that would soon be empty. Scientists working on projects that would never be finished, and she thought about the message she had sent. 2 words traveling through space toward something the aliens didn't know existed. Something that might be their only hope. "You've made one mistake," she said quietly. Both alien leaders focused on her. "What mistake?" Crystalline, singer of sorrows, asked. "You think you know everything about humans? You think you've studied us completely? You think you understand what we're capable of? We have observed your species for 50 years, Hyvanode 737 said. We know your capabilities, we know your limitations. We know your weapons, your ships, your technologies. You cannot resist what is coming." Minji smiled for the first time since the negotiations began. It was not a pleasant smile. "You know what we've shown you, you know what we've let you see? But humans have always been good at keeping secrets." The aliens exchanged glances again. For a moment, uncertainty flickered in their expressions. "There are no human secrets we have not discovered," Crystalline, singer of sorrows said, but there was less confidence in its voice. "Are you sure about that?" Doyan asked. "Are you absolutely certain you know everything about human capabilities?" The chamber's lights flickered. Just for a second, but everyone noticed. Somewhere in the station systems, power fluctuations were starting to appear. Gravity sensors were detecting anomalies at the edge of the system. Something was coming. Something the aliens had never seen before. "What have you done?" Hyvanode 737 demanded. Minji's smile widened. "We've stopped pretending to be what you think we are." In the cold darkness between the stars, something stirred. The research ship Defiance drifted among the asteroids, its hull scarred from decades of secret missions. Inside, warning lights began flashing red as systems that had been dormant for years suddenly came to life. Minho ran through the corridors, his footsteps echoing off metal walls. As the ship's chief medical officer, he had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Behind him, Yuna followed with her tablet, monitoring readings that most humans would find impossible to understand. "How long has she been sleeping?" Yuna asked as they reached the sealed chamber deep in the ship's heart. 112 years, 4 months, 18 days, Minho replied without hesitation. "The longest any human has ever been in cryogenic suspension." They stopped before a door marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Warning signs in 12 different languages all said the same thing: authorized personnel only, extreme danger. "Do not enter without proper clearance." Minho placed his hand on the scanner. The door recognized him and slid open with a soft hiss. Cold air flowed out, carrying a scent like ozone and something else. Something that made the hair on their arms stand up. The chamber beyond was small and round, its walls covered with equipment that hummed with power. In the center stood a single pod made from a material that seemed to absorb light. Tubes and wires connected it to machines that monitored things science barely understood. "Vital signs are stabilizing," Yuna reported, reading her tablet. "Brain activity is increasing. Quantum field resonance is..." "This can't be right." "What does it say?" "It says she's already awake, not just conscious, but aware." "Of everything, the entire system?" Yuna's voice was barely a whisper. "She knows about the peace talks. She knows about the alien fleets. She knows what they're planning." Inside the pod, something moved. The lid began to rise with a sound like breaking glass. Vapor poured out, thick and white, carrying that same strange scent. Through the mist, they could see a figure sitting up slowly. Hyunjae opened her eyes for the first time in over a century. But when she looked at them, Minho felt like she was seeing more than just 2 humans in a small room. She was seeing through the walls of the ship, through space itself, to the distant station where humans and aliens sat at a negotiating table. "They mean to kill us all," she said. Her voice was soft, but it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Every man, woman, and child who dares to dream of stars." "Not if we stop them," Yuna replied. Though her hands were shaking as she helped Hyunjae from the pod, Hyunjae stood and reality seemed to shift around her. The chamber's walls became translucent, showing the asteroid field beyond. The gravity felt different, lighter, as if the ship itself was adjusting to her presence. "Where is Jayan?" she asked. "On the bridge," Minho said. "Waiting for orders. Tell him to prepare for transition." "We're going to Harmony Point." "That's impossible," Yuna protested. "The journey would take days even at maximum speed. The aliens will have completed their genocide by then." Yunjie smiled, and when she did, the stars outside the ship seemed to flicker. "You're thinking like a normal human, Yuna. I stopped being normal a very long time ago." She walked toward the door, and it opened before she reached it. As she moved through the corridors, the ship responded to her presence. Lights brightened. Systems hummed with new energy. The very air seemed to vibrate with possibility. On the bridge, Captain Jayan was studying sensor readings that made no sense. His instruments showed gravitational anomalies throughout the asteroid field. Space itself seemed to be bending around their location. "Captain," his navigation officer called out, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the quantum chamber. Whatever's happening down there, it's affecting local space-time." "I know," Jayan replied. He had been waiting for this day since he first took command of the Defiance. "All hands, prepare for immediate departure. Set course for Harmony Point." "Sir, at current speed that's a 3-day journey." "The diplomatic mission will be over by then. We won't be using current speed." The bridge doors opened and Hyunjae entered. Every person on the bridge felt it immediately. The air became charged like the moment before lightning strikes. Console displays flickered and showed readings that shouldn't exist. "Hello, Jayan," she said. "It's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do." The captain nodded. He had served with enhanced humans before, but never anyone like her. Project Awakening had created something new, something that existed on the edge between human and something else entirely. "All stations report ready," he said. "Then let's begin." Hyunjae placed her hand on the ship's central console. The moment she touched it, everything changed. The Defiance had been built with technology that officially didn't exist. Its hull contained materials that could phase between dimensions. Its engines could manipulate space-time itself. But it had never been tested at full capacity because no normal human could control such forces without being destroyed. Hyunjae wasn't normal. Power flowed through the ship's systems like water finding its course. The hull began to shimmer, becoming translucent, then nearly invisible. The engines didn't roar to life. They sang a harmony that resonated through multiple dimensions. "Quantum field established," the science officer reported, his voice filled with awe. "We're existing in 17 different dimensional phases simultaneously." "Translation beginning," the navigation officer added. "We're not moving through space, Captain. We're moving space around us." Outside, the asteroid field began to blur. Not because the ship was moving fast, but because reality itself was flowing past them like water. Stars stretched into lines of light, then compressed back into points, as Hyunjae guided them through dimensions that had no names. "How is this possible?" Yuna whispered, watching displays that showed their position jumping across light years in seconds. "Humans think in 3 dimensions, Hyunjae replied, her eyes closed in concentration. "The aliens think in 4, sometimes 5, but consciousness isn't bound by dimensional limits. If you can perceive all possibilities simultaneously, you can choose which reality to exist in." The ship's sensors showed Harmony Point approaching, even though they had only been traveling for minutes. But as they drew closer, other readings began appearing on the displays. Alien fleets surrounding human colonies. Weapons charging, transport ships moving into position. "They're not waiting for the negotiations to end," Jayan realized. "They're already beginning the attacks." Through the ship's quantum sensors, they could see human families being pulled from their homes. Children crying as they were separated from parents. Scientists destroyed along with their research. Entire civilizations being erased while the peace talks continued. "We're too late," Minho said. "No." Hyunjae's voice carried absolute certainty. "We're exactly on time." She opened her eyes, and for a moment everyone on the bridge saw what she saw. the entire galaxy laid out like a map. Every ship, every planet, every living being connected by threads of possibility. And at the center of it all, the negotiation chamber where humans sat across from aliens who had already decided humanity's fate. "Take us in," she ordered. "Not to the docking bay?" "Directly to the chamber." "Ma'am, that's impossible." "The station's hull won't stop us." Yunjie smiled, and reality bent around her will. "Nothing will stop us now." The Defiance approached Harmony Point, its hull shimmering between dimensions. Station sensors detected nothing because the ship existed in spaces they couldn't perceive. Guards saw nothing because it moved through realities they couldn't imagine, and in the negotiation chamber, where aliens spoke casually of genocide, the lights began to flicker, as something impossible prepared to arrive. The first sign something was wrong came from the station's gravity sensors. Alarms began sounding throughout Harmony Point as readings showed impossible fluctuations in local spacetime. The artificial gravity wavered, making everyone in the negotiation chamber feel suddenly weightless for a moment before normal weight returned. Crystalline, singer of sorrows, made a sound like cracking ice. "What is happening?" Station security officers rushed to their consoles, trying to understand readings that made no sense. Their sensors showed nothing approaching the station, but gravitational waves were washing over them in patterns no natural phenomenon could create. "System malfunction," Hivanode 737 declared. "The Overmind detects no threats." But Minji was watching her companions. Though Yun had gone very still, the way he did when battle was coming. Worry was staring at her tablet with wide eyes, and young Jiwan was smiling for the first time since the negotiations began. "That's not a malfunction," Minji said quietly. The chamber's lights flickered again, longer this time. When they steadied, there was something different about the air itself. It felt charged, like the moment before a storm. The alien representatives looked around nervously, their advanced senses detecting changes that their instruments couldn't measure. Deep in the station's main docking bay, something impossible happened. The air in the center of the empty space began to shimmer. Not like a hologram or energy field, but like reality itself was becoming uncertain. The shimmer grew larger, taking the shape of a ship that shouldn't exist. The Defiance materialized, slowly phasing into normal space from dimensions that had no names. Its hull was scarred from decades of secret missions, but as it became solid, those scars seemed to heal themselves. The ship settled onto the deck without making a sound, as if gravity had simply decided to accept it. Maintenance workers in the bay stared in shock. No ship had requested docking permission. No ship had appeared on their sensors. But there it was, real and solid and somehow wrong in ways they couldn't explain. "Alert security," one of them whispered into his comm unit. "We have an unauthorized vessel in Bay 7. But security was already dealing with problems throughout the station. Every sensor array was showing different readings. Some detected massive energy signatures, others showed nothing at all. The station's computer systems were trying to process information that broke the rules of physics. Inside the ship, Hyunjae stood at the airlock. She had changed from the simple clothes she wore in the cryogenic chamber into something that looked like a uniform but moved like liquid shadow. Minseok, her personal guard, stood beside her in armor that seemed to absorb light. "Are you ready?" she asked him. "Always," he replied. He had been enhanced too, though not to her level. His body could survive in vacuum, his reflexes were faster than any normal human, and his strength could crush metal. But even he felt small next to what she had become. The airlock opened without any of the usual safety procedures. Air should have rushed out into space, but instead it simply flowed around them like water. Hyunjae stepped onto the station deck, and where her feet touched the metal, patterns of light spread outward like ripples. Station personnel backed away as she walked through the corridors. Not because they were afraid, but because their bodies instinctively knew they were in the presence of something beyond their understanding. Doors opened before she reached them, security barriers deactivated at her approach. The station itself seemed to recognize her authority. "Stop right there," a security officer called out, raising his weapon. Identify yourself. Hyunjae looked at him and he felt his weapon become impossibly heavy in his hands. Not through any technology, but through the simple certainty that using it would be meaningless. He lowered it without understanding why. I am what humanity becomes when you push us too far, she said, and her voice carried down the corridor even though she spoke softly. In the negotiation chamber, the aliens were becoming agitated. Their instruments showed energy signatures moving through the station, but the readings were impossible. No known technology could generate such fields. Your people are attempting sabotage, Crystalline Singer of Sorrows accused. Our people are responding to threats, Do-Yeon replied. You declared war on humanity. Did you expect us to surrender quietly? We expected you to accept reality, Hyvanode 737 said. Human technology cannot threaten the combined might of the Galactic Council. You keep saying that, Worry observed. But you sound less certain each time. The chamber's main doors began to change, not opening but becoming transparent, as if the solid metal was simply deciding to let light pass through. Through the translucent barrier they could see a figure approaching. A woman walking with calm purpose, followed by a man in armor that seemed to bend light around it. That's impossible, the Veilth leader said. Those doors are sealed. They cannot be opened without proper authorization codes. Maybe she has authorization you don't know about, Jawan suggested. The doors didn't open. They simply ceased to exist as barriers. One moment they were solid metal, the next they were empty space. Hyunjae walked through as if they had never been there at all. Every alien in the chamber felt her presence immediately. The Veilth's crystalline bodies began resonating with frequencies they had never experienced. The sound was beautiful and terrifying, like music that could shatter worlds. Hyvanode 737 staggered as something impossible happened to its connection to the Overmind. For the first time in its existence, it was alone in its own thoughts. What have you done? It demanded, its voice no longer flat and emotionless but filled with fear. I've given you individuality, Hyunjae replied. For a few minutes you get to think for yourself instead of being told what to think. The Kroon translator looked around wildly as its own mind, separate from the collective, tried to process the situation. It was like a person suddenly waking up after a lifetime of sleepwalking. Crystalline Singer Sorrows was making sounds. Like a crystal orchestra in pain. Its body was shifting through colors that had no names, trying to process sensory input from dimensions it couldn't perceive. You're not human, it managed to say. I'm what humans become when we stop pretending to be limited by what others think is possible, Hyunjae said. She took a seat at the negotiation table as if she belonged there. I understand you've been discussing humanity's future without asking our permission. Minji felt a wave of relief so strong it almost brought tears to her eyes. Whatever happened next, they were no longer helpless. Whatever Hyunjae had become, she was still fundamentally human, still on their side. The negotiations are concluded, Hyvanode 737 said, though its voice shook. Humanity will comply with the Council's decision. No, Hyunjae said simply. We won't. The chamber fell silent except for the harmonics still emanating from the Veilth representative. Outside, alarms continued to sound as the station's systems tried to cope with her presence. But inside this room, the only sound was the quiet breathing of humans and the confused chittering of aliens who were beginning to realize they had made a terrible mistake. You cannot resist the combined fleets of the Galactic Council, Crystalline Singer of Sorrow said. Though it sounded less confident than before, Hyunjae smiled, and when she did, every screen in the chamber lit up with displays the aliens had never seen before, fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Not just their own ships, but others. Human ships that didn't appear on any official registry. Ships that existed in spaces between normal reality. You've been counting our public fleet? She said, the ships we let you see. But humans have always been good at keeping secrets. The displays showed the truth. Humanity's real strength had been hidden for decades, waiting for a moment like this. Ships that could phase between dimensions, weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. People like her, sleeping in secret locations, ready to wake when Humanity needed them most. The peace talks are over, Hyunjae announced. Now we discuss new terms. The holographic displays around the chamber showed a galaxy that the aliens thought they knew. But as Hyunjae gestured, the images changed. Hidden human fleets became visible. Secret bases appeared on maps. Ships that had been disguised as cargo. Vessels revealed weapons that could crack moons in half. "This is impossible," Crystalline Singer of Sorrows said, its voice creating discordant harmonies that hurt to hear. "Our intelligence networks would have detected such forces." "Your intelligence networks saw what we wanted them to see," Hyunjae replied. She waved her hand and new displays appeared showing decades of carefully planted false information. Fake. Cargo manifests. Staged accidents that hid military construction. Diplomatic missions that were actually reconnaissance operations. Hyvanode 737 was struggling with its newfound individuality. Without the Overmind's constant guidance, it was experiencing emotions for the first time: fear, confusion, and something else it didn't recognize, doubt about everything it had been told to believe. The Overmind calculated all possibilities, it said, but its voice wavered. Human capabilities were assessed and found insufficient. The Overmind calculated based on incomplete data, Hyunjae said gently, almost like she was talking to a confused child. "We've been hiding our true capabilities for over a century. Every time you thought you understood us, we were already 3 steps ahead." Gunwoo watched from the observation deck above the chamber. As humanity's coordinator for Black Operations, he had helped plan the deception that was now being revealed. For decades, human agents had fed false information to alien intelligence services. They had staged fake disasters to hide construction. Projects, they had pretended to struggle with technologies they had already mastered. "Show them the Prometheus files," he said into his communicator. New displays materialized in the air, showing research projects the aliens had never suspected. Humans hadn't just been exploring space, they had been experimenting with the fundamental forces of reality itself. Time manipulation, dimensional folding, consciousness transfer between quantum states. Project Awakening was just the beginning. Hyunjae explained, "We created 12 others like me. Each one sleeping, waiting, learning. Each one developing abilities you can't imagine." The aliens looked at each other with what might have been growing panic. Their entire strategy had been based on the assumption that humans were a young species with limited technology. But the evidence before them suggested something terrifying, that humanity had been pretending to be weak while becoming something far more dangerous. "Where are the others?" Crystalline Singer of Sorrows demanded. "Everywhere," Hyunjae said simply. "Watching your fleets, studying your weaknesses, waiting for my signal." As if summoned by her words, the chamber's communication systems activated on their own. Voices began speaking from across the galaxy, each one calm and confident. "Seojin here, monitoring the Veilth home fleet. They're having some interesting technical difficulties." Yujin reporting from the Kroon core worlds. Their quantum computers seem to be experiencing cascading failures. Gunho in position near the council chambers. Several representatives are requesting emergency evacuations of their home systems. Each voice represented another enhanced human, another sleeping weapon that had awakened. The aliens were realizing that while they had been preparing to attack humanity, humans had been positioning themselves to strike at the heart of alien civilization. Wuri was reading data streams that were appearing on her tablet without her, requesting them. "They're not just near our colonies," she said in amazement. "They're everywhere the aliens thought they were safe," Do-yeon nodded grimly. "We never put all our faith in diplomacy. While Minji was talking peace, we were preparing for war." Hyvanode 737 was accessing its own databanks, trying to understand how its intelligence had been so completely wrong. But as it searched, it found gaps, missing reports, deleted files. Evidence of systematic manipulation going back generations. "You have been planning this since first contact," it said. "We've been preparing for the possibility that other species might not be as peaceful as they claimed," Minji corrected. Humans have learned to hope for the best while preparing for the worst. The chamber's main display showed the current situation throughout the galaxy. Alien fleets that had been moving to surround human colonies were now dealing with their own crises. Ships losing power, communication networks failing, entire battle groups reporting systems malfunctions that their engineers couldn't explain. "What do you want?" Crystalline Singer of Sorrows asked, its crystalline body dimming to a dull gray. "What we've always wanted," Yunjay said. "To be left alone to live our lives in peace. To explore the galaxy without interference. To grow and learn and become whatever we choose to become. And if your expansion threatens other species, then we'll find ways to coexist that don't involve genocide." Yunjay's voice hardened. "Unlike some species we could mention." Yuan was monitoring communications from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The alien attacks that had begun during the negotiations were faltering. Transport ships designed to carry away human civilians were instead fleeing in panic as their systems failed around them. "The evacuation fleets are retreating," she reported. "Colonial militia forces are reporting that the aliens are abandoning their assault positions. They're learning that enslaving humanity is more difficult than they expected," Do-Yun observed. With satisfaction, HiveNode-737 was struggling with concepts it had never needed to consider while part of the collective mind. Individual choice, personal responsibility, the possibility that everything the Overmind had told it might be wrong. "If we withdraw our forces," it said slowly, "if we abandon our plans for human containment, what guarantee do we have that humanity won't seek revenge?" "The same guarantee we had that you wouldn't seek our destruction," Yunjay replied. "None at all. The difference is that we're offering you a choice." She gestured, and the displays changed to show possible futures. In some, alien and human civilizations coexisted peacefully, sharing knowledge and resources. In others, the galaxy burned as species after species fell to human expansion. "We could destroy you," she said matter-of-factly. "Your homeworlds, your fleets, your entire civilizations. We have the power now, and you've given us every reason to use it." The aliens looked at the projections showing their worlds burning, their people dying, their empires reduced to ash. It was everything they had planned to do to humanity, reflected back at them. "But we won't," Yunjay continued, "because that's not who we are. We don't commit genocide, even against those who plan it for us. We defend ourselves, we protect our people. But we don't become monsters just because we can." Crystalline Singer of Sorrows was silent for a long moment, its body cycling through colors that might have represented deep thought. When it finally spoke, its voice was different, smaller, more uncertain. "What are your terms?" "Simple," Minji said, taking charge of the negotiations once again. "All alien forces withdraw from human space immediately. No interference with human colonies or expansion. No attempts to limit human technological development. No surveillance networks in our territory, and in return, humanity continues to be a productive member of the galactic community. We share beneficial technologies. We participate in joint research projects. We help solve problems that threaten everyone. But under our own terms," Yunjay added, "as equals, not as subjects." The aliens looked at each other, probably communicating through channels humans couldn't detect. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that they were now the ones facing extinction if they made the wrong choice. "We need time to consider," Crystalline Singer of Sorrows said finally. "You have 1 hour," Yunjay replied. "After that, we'll assume you prefer the alternative solution." As the aliens filed out of the chamber to consult with their governments, Minji allowed herself to smile. The peace talks had ended when Hyunjae rose, but something better was beginning. Not submission or dominance, but a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. The hour passed slowly. Throughout the galaxy, alien governments held emergency sessions as reports flooded in from their fleets. Ship after ship reported system failures that their best engineers couldn't explain. Battle groups that had been preparing to attack human colonies were instead requesting immediate assistance. On Harmony Point, the alien representatives huddled in private chambers. their confident facade crumbling as they tried to understand how completely they had misjudged humanity. Their intelligence agencies sent increasingly desperate reports. Entire alien worlds were experiencing infrastructure problems. Communication networks were failing. Even their most secure military installations were reporting unauthorized access to classified systems. In the negotiation chamber, the humans waited. Hyunjae sat calmly at the table, but everyone could feel the power radiating from her like heat from a fire. Minseok stood guard by the door, his enhanced senses monitoring the entire station. Outside, more human ships were arriving, not the research vessels and cargo haulers the aliens expected, but sleek warships that seemed to bend light around their hulls. "They're scared," Jiwon observed, watching alien security forces scramble to respond to threats they couldn't locate or understand. "Good," Doyeon replied. "Fear might teach them what diplomacy couldn't." Worry was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The other awakened humans are reporting complete success. Every major alien military installation is experiencing critical system failures. Their fleets are effectively disabled. Without a single shot fired, Minji noted with satisfaction. "We're not conquerors, we're problem solvers." The chamber doors opened and the alien representatives returned. But they looked different now. Crystalline Singer of Sorrows moved slowly, its crystalline body flickering between colors like a dying light. Hyvanode 737 walked hesitantly, still struggling with individual thought after a lifetime of collective consciousness. "We have consulted with our governments," the Veilth leader said, its voice barely above a whisper. "And what have they decided?" Hyunjae asked. "The Veilth High Council acknowledges that our assessment of human capabilities was incomplete," Crystalline Singer of Sorrows admitted. "We withdraw our demands for human containment." The Overmind. Hyvanode 737 paused, struggling with the concept of speaking for itself instead of a collective. "The Overmind has calculated new probabilities based on updated information. Continued aggression against humanity would result in unacceptable losses." Other alien representatives stepped forward. The insectoid Thaxian ambassador clicked its mandibles nervously. "The Hive Queen's requests clarification on the boundaries of human expansion. The Molten Consortium wishes to renegotiate our trade agreements," added another representative whose species looked like living metal. One by one, they abandoned their previous demands. The united front that had seemed so powerful just hours before was collapsing as each species realized they were facing not helpless prey, but apex predators who had been pretending to be harmless. "What guarantees can you offer that humanity won't use these capabilities for conquest?" asked the ethereal representative, a being of pure energy barely contained in a humanoid shell. "The same guarantee you offered us," Hyunjae replied. "Our word, backed by mutual self-interest." "But your power is so much greater than we realized," Crystalline Singer of Sorrows protested. "How can we trust that you won't abuse it?" Minji leaned forward. "Because in all our years in space, in all our encounters with other species, we've never been the aggressors. We explore, we trade, we learn, we defend ourselves when attacked. But we don't conquer for the sake of conquest." "Your expansion pattern suggests otherwise," Hyvanode 737 said, though with less conviction than before. "Our expansion pattern suggests curiosity and a desire for new homes for our growing population," Doyeon corrected. "We don't strip worlds, bear or enslave other species. We build communities where different peoples can work together." Hyunjae gestured, and the chamber's displays showed human colonies throughout the galaxy. But instead of military bases or industrial complexes, they showed cities where humans lived alongside aliens. Research stations where different species shared knowledge. Trading posts where goods flowed freely between worlds. "This is what human expansion looks like," she said. "Not conquest, not domination, cooperation. But your hidden fleets, your secret weapons, your enhanced individuals," the Thaxian ambassador clicked. "Why hide such capabilities if not for eventual aggression?" "Because we've learned that some species interpret strength as threat," Worry explained. We hid our capabilities because we hoped we'd never need to use them. We wanted to be judged by our actions, not our potential for destruction. And yet you developed such destructive potential, the Molten Consortium representative pointed out. As did you, Yunjie replied simply. Every species in this room has weapons that could destroy worlds. The difference is that we built ours. For defense, not conquest. The chamber fell silent as the aliens processed this. They had come here expecting to cage a dangerous animal, only to discover they were facing something far more complex. A species that could destroy them all, but chose not to? What happens now? Crystalline Singer of Sorrows asked. Now we rebuild trust, Minji said. We establish new agreements based on mutual respect instead of fear. We create safeguards that protect everyone without caging anyone. The buffer zones. You mentioned, Hivanode 737 said. 100 light-years around human space. That is acceptable. More than acceptable, Yunjie agreed. It gives everyone room to grow without stepping on each other's toes. Over the following hours, they hammered out the details of a new galactic order. Trade agreements that benefited all parties? Research partnerships that shared knowledge freely. Defense pacts that protected smaller species from larger predators. And oversight committees that included humans not as subjects but as equals. There's one more thing, Yunjie said as the negotiations neared their end. The other awakened humans. They're not going back to sleep. The aliens tensed, probably imagining enhanced humans spreading throughout the galaxy like a plague. We're tired of hiding, she continued. We want to contribute openly to galactic civilization. Our abilities can solve problems no one else can handle. Dimensional rifts, quantum storms. Stellar engineering projects that require precise manipulation of spacetime. You're offering your services? The ethereal representative asked. We're offering partnership, Minji clarified. Humans have always been builders and explorers. Now we can build and explore on a scale that benefits everyone. As the final agreements were signed, Jiwan looked around the chamber. Hours earlier, this had been a courtroom where humanity was being sentenced to death. Now it was a conference room where equals planned a shared future. The peace talks really did end when you rose, she said to Hyunjae. Yes, Hyunjae replied. But something better began. Outside the station, human ships were arriving from across the galaxy. Not the hidden warships with their reality-bending weapons, but colony ships full of families, research vessels packed with scientists, and cargo haulers loaded with goods to trade. The real human fleet. The one that explored and built and dreamed of better tomorrows. The aliens watched in amazement as humanity revealed its true nature. Not conquerors hiding their strength, but builders who had prepared to defend what they had created. Not monsters pretending to be civilized, but people who chose cooperation over domination even when they had the power to take whatever they wanted. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Human colonies expanded, but now they did so openly, with alien partners helping to plan sustainable growth. The enhanced humans emerged from hiding to tackle problems that had plagued civilization for millennia. And slowly, carefully, trust began to grow between species that had almost destroyed each other. The peace talks had ended when she rose. But the peace itself had only just begun.